The community of inquiry theoretical framework model is based on the learning experience through three interdependent elements. The elements in the model are cognitive presence, social presence, and teaching presence. This video will discuss teaching presence. Teaching presence is defined as the design, facilitation, and direction of cognitive and social processes for the purpose of realizing personally meaningful and educational worthwhile learning outcomes. As a teacher, your role is to create and sustain presence when you teach online, just like you do in your on-campus course. It just looks and feels a little bit different. Online students need your presence and expertise from day one until the end of the semester. There are three components of teaching presence in the community of inquiry. The first component is design and organization. The design and organization begins in the planning stages, where the teacher thinks about the course structure on the learning management system, the process, the interactions, and the evaluation of the course. The first day of an online course sets the stage for learning and creates first impressions of the faculty teaching the course. If the content is not easily accessible, organized, and complete, teaching presence may be diminished. The second component is facilitating discourse. Communication in the online course is different from face-to-face courses and appears to be related to student learning outcomes and satisfaction. It is necessary for the teacher to maintain engagement in and focus on the online discussion board by helping students understand the course content, by identifying areas of disagreement and agreement, encouraging student contributions, and assessing the effectiveness of the discussion board discourse. The third component is direct instruction. Direct instruction consists of sharing intellectual information, knowledge, skills, and resources, interjecting comments into discussions, organizing activities, and allowing the students to construct knowledge using personal context. The instructor uses meaningful feedback throughout the learning experience, as well as their expertise, knowledge, and skills in the online course. Let's dive into component 1, design and organization. Setting the curriculum is important. Define the course outcomes and the objectives, and use these outcomes and objectives to keep you on task when designing your course. You should start with the need to know content, then supplement with the nice to know, and if there is time or space, add the fun to know. Design methods. Select a design method and decide on your course topics. When designing, select appropriate course content to include reading materials, lectures, videos, websites, OER resources, and more. Develop assignments and assessments and activities that align with these course goals and competencies, and try and steer clear of busy work. Next up is time parameters. You'll want to establish your weekly schedule, your due dates, and any other timed items in your course, and then stick to them. And you'll want to do this up front so students are aware and can make plans to schedule and complete their assessments, assignments, and content. Utilizing the LMS is also important. Deliver your content in clear, concise, and an organized manner on the LMS. You must also be a proficient user of your LMS so you can help your students be successful users as well. The great thing about the LMS is there's many tools that you can use to help support your teaching presence. And establishing netiquette. You can establish netiquette and share it with your students in the course syllabus. It is important to establish this netiquette for your online course space to include letting students know that they are expected to follow common courtesy in all communications to include email, discussion board, and Canvas. You can even give them some rules of netiquette so that they understand the importance and how to establish netiquette in the online classroom. Let's talk about some design and organization tips and tricks. So you'll really want to make sure you're designing your course with navigation and use in mind. So the less time spent trying to navigate the course, trying to click on links, trying to find where things are, the more time students can spend in the learning process. Before you open your course to students, you want to make sure everything is ready to go. So update and double check your course space, especially if you're reusing your course space semester after semester, and make sure all the dates and opening information and content are the correct content. The discussion board is the heart of your learning community and needs to be tended to cultivate your community, promote meaningful discourse between students, and to create a peer-to-peer learning environment. Let your students know that you are with them every week. Create weekly interactions by sending out an announcement. Here's a time saver tip for you. Create announcements and reuse them year after year by changing a few dates or some of the personal information for that actual course each semester, and then you will be able to save time creating announcements while making sure students are getting all the important information. Chances are you'll be reusing your course space, so why not reuse your announcements? Now let's look into facilitating discourse. The first step is identify areas of agreement or disagreement. This is where you can help students in the discussion board by calling attention to areas of agreement or disagreement. Online discussions need to be guided just like you would do it during the class. Help students seek consensus and understanding in the discussion board. Encourage your students to share by acknowledging, encouraging, and reinforcing student contributions on the discussion board. Set the climate for learning and peer engagement on the discussion board. Draw in participants by prompting the discussions. Assess the efficacy of the discussion and be able to direct the discussion if it is veering off topic or needs more depth. So now let's check out some tips and tricks for facilitating discourse. So participate in the discussion board. When you are in teaching person, do you interact with your students during classroom discussions? I'm sure you do. Give your online students the benefit of interacting with them. You do not have to interact with all students on every discussion board. Meaningful discourse on the online discussion board is dependent on the collaboration of students and faculty and the use of discussion board questions that allow students to test their ideas against one another in order to gain new understanding. You don't have to respond to all of your class each week on the discussion board, but you should respond to at least 5 to 10% of your class and make sure that you respond to them all at least once or more each semester. You block time for your traditional face-to-face class, so why not give your students the benefit of your time while you're teaching online as well? And block some protected time in your calendar. Instead of large blocks of time, try spreading it out over the week so that you have time to cover discussion board participation and replies, grading, and engaging with your students in other ways. Create a checklist or a matrix with students' names and the discussion board titles. That way you can mark who you replied to and help remind you who you should reply to on the next discussion board. Let's go ahead and dive into direct instruction. Let's move on to the last component of teaching presence, direct instruction. You will want to present the learning materials and answer questions so that you can help your students be successful not only in your course with assessments, but also on the discussion board. Create assessments that assess the learning goals and competencies and give students feedback. In an online course, feedback is so important. The feedback lets the student know how they are doing based on that timely feedback from you. And it also helps them understand what they might need to do to improve. Be prepared to diagnose misconceptions in the discussion board through emails and even by creating just-in-time videos after using assessment data and analyzing it to realize that there might be something students are missing. Remember that you are the expert and students want to hear from you, so inject pointers and include knowledge and information that is beneficial to the students in the class content and on the discussion board. Meaningful discourse on the online discussion board is dependent on the collaboration of students and the use of discussion board questions that allow students to test their ideas against one another in order to gain new understanding. However, meaningful discourse doesn't happen overnight. The instructor needs to cultivate the learning environment by creating well-written discussion board questions. The questions need to allow students to create thoughtful answers that call on their prior knowledge and experience, interpreting content, synthesis, inferences, and evaluation of their peer understanding of the topic in order to create meaningful discourse. The students' graded feedback give them an idea of how they are performing and what they can do to improve. Prompt feedback is essential in an online class and is almost more important than quality feedback that takes longer to complete. While quality feedback is important, it is also important to know that by the time you grade and complete quality feedback, the student has moved on to the current week's materials, discussion, or assignment and may not look back at that feedback. Create rubrics, however, they do take some more time up front, but it does pay off in the ease of use and time saved when grading your students' assignments. You can also create automatic feedback when using your quizzing LMS. Feedback should move beyond the typical correct and incorrect wording so that students have the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. Add some detailed information on incorrect answers to include the correct answer and where to find the content in the course so that they can review it again. You can also use canned feedback. So canned feedback is when you compile a common list of feedback for each assignment that you have deployed and copy and paste that feedback to create new feedback for students. So if you find yourself saying the same thing over and over again, you would save that phrase or sentence and put it on a Word document. Finally, you can and you should create a 5 to 10 minute weekly video of you sharing announcements, recaps, overviews, assessment results, and anything else you feel that students should know about the previous week or the week ahead. Teaching presence is an important part of the online students' learning experience as well as your teaching experience. I hope this video and the tips help you create an engaging learning environment filled with great learning experiences for you and your students.